Albuquerque, New Mexico, December 29, 1998. The year was about to end in the northeast part of the city. It was an ordinary morning. People were heading to work as usual. Bank employees and customers were also starting their day. Nobody had any idea what was about to happen there in just a little while. That day there was a man who had robbed another bank only a short time earlier. Now he was ready to withdraw money a second time. But this withdrawal was not going to be from an ATM. This time it was going to be directly from the bank counter at gunpoint. The man entered the bank. There was no nervousness on his face, as if everything were normal. He calmly walked straight to the counter and said to the cashier, "Give me all the money in the cash drawer." According to bank training, the teller handed over the money without any argument. In such situations, avoiding confrontation is the safest way. Along with the cash, the teller placed a bundle that contained a dye pack. After a short while, it would explode and spread ink over the money. A dye pack is a small packet hidden among the bank's cash. When a thief runs away with the money, this packet bursts and stains the bills, making the stolen money useless and helping police catch the thief. The robber, without making any noise, left exactly the way he had come. As soon as he walked out, the bank immediately called the police. Since bank robbery is a federal crime, the FBI was also informed right away. FBI Special Agents Scott Campbell and John Thunberg quickly took over the case. For Agent Thunberg, this call felt like just another routine case. At that time, Albuquerque had a bad reputation for bank robberies. By the end of the 1990s, almost 90 to 100 bank robberies took place here every year. But Thunberg didn't know this case was going to be completely different from the rest. Inside the bank, the agents questioned the people present. Everyone said the same thing. Everything seemed so normal that many didn't even realize the bank had been robbed. There were no gunshots, no shouting. Even the teller didn't remember much about the man. The description they got was very ordinary. A white or maybe Hispanic man, black hair, average height and build, wearing sunglasses and a plain cap. No special clothes, no identifying marks. The FBI forensic team carefully examined the teller counter and the door, but they didn't find any usable fingerprints or solid evidence. The only hope left was the bank's surveillance cameras. Every bank has them as an essential security tool. Sometimes the cameras are good quality, and sometimes they're completely useless. In this case, the cameras were extremely poor quality. The footage showed the man, but identifying his face was impossible. Recordings of both robberies were found, but there wasn't a single clear picture. No angle revealed his face properly. Only the top of his cap was visible, but his face was completely hidden. The robber had looted 2 different banks in a single day, and then disappeared. He left behind neither fingerprints nor evidence. He had even neutralized the bank's surveillance system. The FBI had no way to identify him. The investigation revealed that this man had never been involved in any previous bank robbery in Albuquerque. No old record of him was found. The FBI suspected that maybe he was an outsider who came to town for a few days and robbed banks when he got the chance. The agents began thoroughly searching the area. They knocked on every door near the bank, hoping someone had seen him fleeing or caught a glimpse of his car. That's when they got their first big lead. A witness came forward, a neighbor living in the alley behind the bank. He said he saw a man running away from the bank. The man turned into the alley and vanished. Then he saw red smoke suddenly rise. The FBI immediately realized this was the dye pack that had gone off in the cash. The witness hadn't just seen the man. He had also seen the car the man escaped in. Most importantly, he had noted down the complete license plate number. The car was registered in Nevada, which made the FBI's suspicions stronger. They were now sure the robber was not an Albuquerque local. The FBI ran the plate through their system. The car's owner and its registered address came up, but the address wasn't a house. It was a motel near the Las Vegas Strip. It looked like a deliberate attempt to mislead the police. The FBI thought they might have hit another dead end, but they didn't give. They checked the plate against credit bureau records. That's when they got new information. The car loan was linked to another address, this time in Wyoming. The FBI immediately sent an agent there. The agent met the registered owner of the car and asked him directly, "Where were you on December 29, the day of the bank robbery?" The man was calm. He said, "I was right here in Wyoming, at an interview for a postal worker job." His statement was confirmed by the supervisor who interviewed him. The man turned out to be simple and straightforward. He had no criminal record and didn't even know his car was connected to a bank robbery in Albuquerque. Then he revealed something important. He no longer had any rights over that car. It was with his ex-wife, Carlette, who lived in Albuquerque. The FBI tracked down Carlette and questioned her. They asked where the car was on the day of the robbery, and if anyone else had a duplicate key. Carlette said she was at work that day. She explained her family was big and relatives often borrowed the car. She didn't even know whether the car had been parked outside her apartment that day or not. But Carlette mentioned one small thing. When she got the car back, there was less fuel in it than before. She gave the FBI permission to search the car. The agents hoped they might find traces of the red dye inside, since they remembered the dye pack had exploded in the stolen cash. But after thoroughly searching the car, they found nothing. A question arose: had the witness written the wrong license plate? It was possible. Still, the agents couldn't ignore Carlette's words. Maybe she was telling the truth, but everything she said seemed like too much coincidence. A car registered in Nevada, spotted in Albuquerque on the day of a bank robbery. That couldn't be dismissed so easily. Up to this point, no solid evidence connected Carlette to the robberies, but the FBI didn't rule her out either. She remained a person of interest. Gradually, all the investigative threads began to dry up. No new evidence, no new witnesses. The case was turning cold. But a few months later, the mysterious robber reappeared. This time he was faster and more dangerous than before. From mid-March 1999 to the end of May, about 6 banks were robbed. His method was the same: walk in, take the money, and leave quietly, leaving no evidence behind. From witness statements, surveillance footage, and bank employees' descriptions, it was now clear to the FBI that a serial bank robber was active in Albuquerque. For both the police and the FBI, this was no longer just a theft case. It was an alarm bell, because the robber was becoming increasingly aggressive. According to Special Agent John Thunberg, the robber no longer simply demanded money. He would get inside the counter and force tellers to empty cash from different drawers. Sometimes his behavior turned violent. Agents feared that if this continued, someone might get injured. Or worse, some witnesses even said it seemed like he was under the influence of drugs. He shoved people for no reason and often brandished his gun. On one occasion, he told bank employees that the money he was taking was to help hungry children in Mexico. After a June robbery, the FBI obtained his surveillance photos, the clearest pictures yet. They still didn't have solid physical evidence, but the photos gave them hope. The FBI decided to seek public help. They released the information to the media. Newspapers carried the news, TV stations showed his photos, and people began calling Crime Stoppers with tips. The robber's pattern was also clear now. He targeted only northeast Albuquerque, and often struck the same area multiple times. The FBI increased surveillance on banks in that area. They hoped that if he returned, they could trap him. But the problem was they still lacked concrete information. Now they had to rely on luck. Every tip was followed, but none led anywhere useful. Meanwhile, the robber's pace increased. Catching him became the FBI's top priority, and it was frustrating to throw all their effort into the case and still not even know the man's name. He vanished every time, leaving no fingerprints, no evidence, just silence. The FBI needed the public's attention, but how could they draw people into this case? The FBI's bank robbery squad knew an old trick: give the robber a nickname. Such names often catch the media's eye, and then ordinary people stay alert about the case. This case was named Robin the Hood, because the robber claimed he was stealing money to feed hungry children. With every new robbery, the media hyped up the story. And surprisingly, the robber himself began enjoying the nickname. Many times he even told tellers directly, "Do you know who I am? I'm Robin the Hood." But the FBI didn't believe his story. Agents thought that, like other bank robbers, he was blowing the money on drugs or a reckless lifestyle. Whatever the truth, This robber was clever. He never left any evidence. The only option for the agents was to wait and see where he struck. By now he had robbed 14 banks, and the only link left was Carlette's car. Special Agent Scott Campbell still kept a connection with Carlette. Over the past 8 months, he had spoken to her 5 or 6 times. Campbell's suspicion was clear. Either Carlette was somehow involved, or she had a clue that could crack the case. Then, in August 1999, the case suddenly took a turn. Carlette, who was 8 months pregnant at the time, called Agent Campbell herself. She said, "We need to talk. I have information that can solve this whole case." Carlette revealed that the real robber was her husband, Byron Chubuk. She said she would explain everything face to face. Campbell scheduled a meeting for the next morning at her apartment. The FBI quickly pulled Byron Chubuk's record. It turned out his past was dangerous. He was connected to Albuquerque's notorious Brewtown gang, and he had a violent nature. Carlette said she was speaking up now only because Byron had moved to St. Louis. The agents offered to interview her in a safe location, but Carlette refused. She believed there was no danger anymore. She had personally watched Byron pack his truck and leave the city, so she felt safe and preferred to meet at her apartment. But the agents were cautious. Before entering, Campbell called Carlette to ask if Byron was nearby, or if she had learned anything new since last night. Once they were sure Byron wasn't there, they sent the address to their dispatch and headed to the apartment. As soon as Agents Thunberg and Campbell entered, they quickly scanned the room to ensure no one else was inside. The moment Carlette saw the bank surveillance photos, she said, "That's Byron." She explained Byron was part of the Brewtown gang, and recently his behavior had become more violent. Then Carlette, in a frightened voice, said, "I fear for my life and for my unborn child." She pleaded with the agents, "Arrest him quickly. I need to get rid of him." Carlette also revealed Byron had threatened not just her but her family as well. He warned that if anyone spoke to the police, his gang would harm them. Now the FBI was sure the case was moving in the right direction. Byron had robbed 14 banks in Albuquerque so far. The police and FBI had been struggling to identify him, but after Carlette's testimony, they finally had the real lead. Carlette believed she was safe because Byron wasn't in town anymore, but she was wrong. During the interviews, suddenly a car stopped outside. Carlette looked out the window and panicked. "He's here. It's him," she said. The agents immediately realized Byron had returned. They knew he could be dangerous, so they quickly hid in the bedroom. Campbell said, "We had already decided that if he came, we would arrest him even without a warrant." The agents drew their guns, ready. Campbell said, "I couldn't see Byron, but I could clearly hear his voice." Carlette was also telling him that we were inside. Campbell felt Byron might burst in at any moment. He fired 2 bullets toward the bedroom wall to stop Byron. There was some shooting, then silence. Campbell thought Byron was reloading. If he came in, the agents were ready. Suddenly a shadow appeared at the door. Campbell was about to pull the trigger, but at the last moment he realized it wasn't Byron. It was Carlette. He quickly stopped himself. "Are you okay?" Campbell asked. Carlette, trembling, nodded. "Yes, I'm fine." The agents searched the entire house, but Byron wasn't there. He had escaped. Campbell later said, "It was nothing short of a miracle. So many bullets were fired, yet neither we nor Carlette were injured. One bullet had passed extremely close to Carlette's head." Where had Byron gone? The agents had no idea. They decided to stay right there, because it was safer inside the apartment. The FBI immediately called the local police. Within minutes, uniformed officers from the Albuquerque Police Department arrived. The police quickly secured the entire area along with the FBI agents. A perimeter was set up all around, and the agents stayed in constant contact with them. After that, the FBI agents took Carlette out of the apartment. Carlette, who was 8 months pregnant, was sent straight to the hospital so that her medical checkup could be done. Meanwhile, the police went door to door in the neighborhood, asking people if anyone had seen Byron Chubuk running away, but no one had seen anything. The most surprising thing was that Byron's car was still parked outside. Lieutenant Terry Ward of the Albuquerque Police Department's Special Investigations Division made it clear it was obvious the matter would not end peacefully now. Byron's old criminal record, his violent clashes with the police, and just now his encounter with an FBI agent. All made it clear that this could be his last fight. And then an officer saw Byron at the window of another apartment in the same building. Byron was now just 2 doors away from Carlet's apartment. The entire building was surrounded. But Byron clearly refused to surrender. The police called their most experienced negotiator. They repeatedly tried to convince Byron to talk to him so he would surrender peacefully, but there was no response from inside. No one knew that Byron was slowly moving in the same direction from where the shots had been fired at the FBI agents earlier. For 3 hours the tension continued, and then suddenly Byron tried to run out of Carlet's apartment. The police immediately fired a beanbag round, a non-lethal weapon that does not injure, but renders a person unconscious. Amazingly, in this entire shooting and standoff, no one was seriously injured. Byron Chubuk was arrested and taken straight to the FBI office. He confessed to robbing 14 banks and attacking federal agents. The court sentenced him to 40 years in prison, but the agents found very little money with him. The FBI never believed that he robbed to feed hungry children. One agent said, "When we got to know Byron well, it became clear that this man would never help any child. He only wanted to satisfy his drug addiction." But the story did not end there. Byron Chubuk had been sentenced to 40 years, but he had no intention of serving it. On December 21, 2000, Byron made a new move in court. He said he wanted to remove his court-appointed lawyers and withdraw his guilty plea. This was not just a legal tactic. It was the first step in his next plan, because now he had to be brought to court again. And that's where Byron Chubuk's most dangerous plan began. U.S. Marshal Senior Inspector Eric Neighbor explains, that day, after the court hearing, Byron was being taken back to the Safi County Correctional Facility. But Byron Chubuk had already prepared his next move. He had the key to unlock his handcuffs. How and when he got it, no one ever knew. As soon as the jail van hit the highway, Byron quietly unlocked his handcuffs and leg irons. Then suddenly he kicked hard at the van window, breaking. Before the guards could understand, Byron had already pulled half his body out. The van driver heard a loud noise. He thought it was a collision with another vehicle, but when he looked in the rearview mirror, the scene was different. Byron was hanging out of the window, about to escape. The guards tried to stop him, but he was too fast, and leaving the other prisoners behind, it was impossible to chase him. On December 21, 2000, Byron Chubuk went from being a convicted criminal to an escaped fugitive. Correctional officers even fired at him. But Senior Inspector Neighbor says, "We don't believe he was hit by any bullets." Now the Albuquerque police launched a massive manhunt. Hundreds of officers, tracking dogs, helicopters, house-to-house searches. Every corner was combed. A helicopter flew in an aerial grid pattern to make sure no area was left unchecked. By now everyone knew Byron Chubuk was extremely dangerous. The FBI suspected that such a desperate man could do anything. He had to be caught quickly, or some innocent person could be put in danger. But as the hours passed, there was no sign of Byron. Agencies had to widen the search area. 6 different agencies began locking down the area. Roadblocks were set up. Every street and every house was searched. But all efforts failed. Byron was nowhere to be found. Then suddenly a woman called the police. She said she had been carjacked. The woman said that a man whose appearance matched Byron's had taken her in the car to the outskirts of the city. But the surprising thing was that he let her go without harming her. She told investigators everything: what Byron was wearing, the time and the place where he dropped her. All focus was shifted to that area. But by the time police arrived, Byron had disappeared again. At 9 p.m., the manhunt was officially called off. So much time had passed that it was clear Byron could now be hundreds of miles away. That night, with no clues, the FBI changed its strategy. Now this was no longer just a manhunt, but a major criminal investigation. Investigators began questioning Byron's family, his gang members and old acquaintances. Everyone believed Byron couldn't be hiding alone. Someone must be helping him. But all the agents encountered were denials and silence. "I told you I don't know anything," One gang member said as he sat in the police car. The Brewtown gang with which Byron was associated was not going to hand over their man at any cost. Considering Byron's violent and uncontrollable nature, the Marshal's Service placed him on the top 15 most wanted list. The inspector says Byron was now so motivated that he never wanted to be caught again. He could do anything to save his life or take someone else. Now the FBI kept an eye on every hangout spot of his gang, observing every place his associates visited. They spoke to people on the street and watched every small movement. At the same time, the FBI started monitoring bank robbery cases across the country. Maybe Byron would strike again. But the surprising thing was that a whole week passed, and there was no activity. Byron seemed to have vanished. Yet everyone knew one thing: Byron was addicted to drugs. He used methamphetamine, a drug that makes a person dangerous, aggressive, and recklessly indifferent. To feed that habit, he would need cash again. The FBI was sure Byron would rob a bank again, and that would be the moment they could catch him. Byron had now become the FBI's top priority. Although some investigators believed Byron was no longer in America, Lieutenant Terry Ward of the Albuquerque police said he had connections in Mexico. He could easily flee there. I don't think he would hide in Albuquerque anymore because now everyone recognized his face and name. But then suddenly, on January 16, 2001, after a gap of 1 year and 5 months from his last robbery, Byron Chubuk returned, and this time right in his old area. In a single day, he robbed 6 banks in Albuquerque. Just a week later, he struck again, robbing 3 banks in 2 days. Every time he approached a teller, his style was the same: hurry up, put the money in the bag. Special Agent John Thunberg, who had been on the case from the start, says Byron was a very reckless kind of robber. He would rob the same banks where he had struck before. He didn't care that people there could recognize him. Each time he said, "I'm Robin the Hood," and every time the police and FBI were left empty-handed. No fingerprints, no clear CCTV footage, no evidence. As the robberies increased, Byron became more fearless. Now he was mocking the police and agencies. After every heist, the FBI found no solid evidence, and these incidents were happening continuously. Byron was no longer just a robber. He had become a name in Albuquerque. His pictures were shown every night on local news channels. Crime Stoppers numbers, posters, and reward announcements were everywhere. The same Byron everywhere. The FBI received hundreds of calls. Maybe it's him, maybe I saw him, but every lead turned out useless. The FBI suspected that Byron was getting help from his Brewtown gang. This was no ordinary gang. They were dangerous and loyal people, with a network capable of hiding Byron, and if needed, even fighting the police. Now Albuquerque police and the FBI were scouring the city. Byron, a violent bank robber and escaped convict, had become uncontrollable again. Several agencies joined forces to pursue him. U.S. Marshal Senior Inspector Eric Knauber says Albuquerque police, the FBI, and the U.S. Marshal's Service together formed a task force so we could combine our strength to catch Byron. This was no longer just a case. It had become a battle of 3 agencies. But despite such a massive operation, Byron kept robbing banks and escaping every time. Investigators tapped several phones of Byron's associates. Some calls suggested Byron might have gone to Mexico. The FBI alerted Border Patrol and Mexican Federal Police, but then some other calls were intercepted, hinting that he might be back in Albuquerque. The location was not clear. Still, the police and FBI kept the pressure on the Brewtown gang, telling them clearly no one would rest until Byron was caught. And this pressure finally worked. On February 5, 2001, a letter arrived at a local radio station. That letter was from Byron Chubuk himself. At Albuquerque's 94 Rock radio station, morning show DJ TJ Trout says, "When we opened that letter, we were stunned. Honestly, we were shocked. It really was Byron's letter." In the letter, Byron laid out some conditions for surrender. He wanted an interview opportunity on night. He wanted to accuse certain police officers of wrongdoing, claiming they had mistreated him, and tried to kill his pregnant wife. Byron wanted all this to reach the public. If that happened, he said he would surrender peacefully. DJ Trout says, "We didn't know if this was a real letter or a prank. I went on air, read the letter and said, if you're really him, call this number." Within seconds, the phone rang. I picked up the receiver. "Hello, can you hear me?" Byron's voice came. "Yes, I can hear." Trout asked, "Are you trying to trap me?" Byron replied, "No, nothing like that." Byron's voice was nervous. He kept saying, "There's a helicopter above. They're watching me. These federal guys, marshals, police. They're all liars. They fired at my house when my wife was pregnant." The end of the call was shocking. Trout asked, "Can we contact you again?" Byron answered, "No. Listen, brother. I have machine guns. I'm ready from all sides. Whatever happens, let it happen." Now it was clear. Byron was ready for a fight. The radio station immediately reported this call to the FBI. One agent said, "I think Byron was doing all this for publicity. He liked being in the public eye. When a criminal comes forward and tries to stay in the media, it's good for us because then we have clues to catch him. The hardest are those who disappear completely." And this time, Byron's own habit became his trouble. The letter he sent to the radio station carried his fingerprints, confirmed by the forensic team. Now it was certain. The letter was real, and Byron himself had sent it. Then investigators checked the CCTV footage of the radio station. At first glance, it was clear the man delivering the letter wasn't Byron. Everyone knew Byron's face, and the man on camera was someone else. The picture was clear, and that became a big clue. A police detective identified the man. His name was Ronald Baker, who sometimes hung out with the Brewtown gang. The police decided to monitor Ronald secretly, without alerting him. He himself would lead them to Byron. Albuquerque's gang squad began surveillance at Ronald Baker's mobile home. For several days, the surveillance continued. Then one night, a man came out who looked like Byron. But because of the darkness, they couldn't be sure. The biggest question now was how to enter the trailer. At the same time, the agencies got another big break. Another of Byron's associates was arrested on carjacking charges. The FBI knew that if this man became an informant, he could lead them straight to Byron. Special Agent John Thunberg says, "We thought we'd put federal charges on him. They're very tough. If he didn't cooperate, he'd spend many years in prison without parole." Initially, he wasn't ready. He feared that if the gang found out he had helped the police, his life could be in danger. But in the federal system, there's no parole, meaning if he refused, it would mean long years in jail. Finally, he was given two options: either face federal charges, or help and instead face state-level charges, where there might be a chance for parole. The fear of prison finally broke him, and he became an informant. The plan was clear: send the informant into the trailer to confirm whether Byron Chubuk was hiding inside or not. He was told to ask for water as an excuse, to spend some time so everything looked natural. But this mission was dangerous. If anyone inside the gang suspected he was working for the police, his life could be in danger. The recorder was switched on. As soon as the informant went inside, FBI agents began listening through the wire. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. The informant started casual conversation to lighten the mood. Then he slowly asked, "Where is Chubuk?" A voice came from inside. "No one is in the back." But the informant sensed something else. Faint noises. Slight movement. As if someone was hiding. Tension rose, and the informant got the signal. It was time to leave. He walked out of the trailer. At the police station, his debriefing began. "Did you hear anything in the back room?" An officer asked. "Yes, there was something," the informant replied. Now investigators were sure Byron Chubuk was inside the trailer, but they couldn't start the operation without solid proof, so they decided to send the informant back inside. "Change clothes, you'll have to go back," an officer said. The informant was nervous. "I don't know if this is right," he said, but finally he agreed. This time, undercover officers were fully ready. If anything went wrong, they would rush in immediately. The informant went back into the trailer. After a while he said, "Brother, I'm very tired. I need a place to sleep." A voice from inside said, "Yes, brother. Crash on the sofa." The informant said, "Okay, I'll be back after telling my friends," and he walked out.
Senior Inspector Eric Naber says, as soon as he came out he confirmed it for us. Byron Chubuk is inside that trailer. Lieutenant Terry Ward says, most career criminals are paranoid. They trust very few people. They're always looking over their shoulder, never staying in one place for long. They keep a low profile. And when drugs come in, that fear increases. Meanwhile, Albuquerque PD's specially trained tactical arrest team got the call. They hoped the operation would end peacefully, but they were prepared for every situation. The gang unit and repeat offenders program teams quietly moved toward the trailer, in stealth mode. But the people inside were not ready to obey police orders. Investigators had to decide quickly. Byron Chubuk was a dangerous fugitive, and stopping him was necessary at any cost. Detective Richard Lewis sped to the scene. Within seconds he saw a vehicle and recognized that Byron Chubuk was inside. That was him, Lewis says, the one we'd been looking for all these days. At that moment, Lewis decided the car must be stopped right there. He deliberately crashed his vehicle straight into Byron's car. Other officers rushed to the spot and saw Byron Chubuk lying on the ground, completely still. Beside him was a TC-9 semi-automatic handgun. Byron had been shot in the chest, but he was alive. Ronald Baker was also arrested. Some bullets were fired around the trailer, where people were sleeping, but miraculously, everyone was safe, and thus, months of effort, public tension, and fear came to a decisive end. Special Agent Scott Campbell says, this mission had to end this way. Good people stayed safe. The bad man was caught and everything ended where it should. In the end, all of Byron Chubuk's claims proved false. He was not a Robin Hood, as he pretended to be. In reality, he was a violent criminal. Lieutenant Terry Ward says, as his entire record shows, Byron Chubuk was guilty of many crimes, escaping from prison, robbing banks, attacking with weapons. His whole life revolved around crime. A federal judge added another 40 years to his previous sentence, making it a total of 80 years in prison. The bullet that brought him down became the end of his crime spree. Byron fully recovered from that wound, but now his world was limited only to the four walls of prison. Special Agent Scott Campbell says, during this entire investigation, I read some of Byron's personal letters. He was a very intelligent man. He could have lived a peaceful and successful life, but for some reason, he chose the path of robbing banks. And for a while he was very good at it. But his greed and his ego proved to be his biggest enemies. Byron Chubuk was a dangerous man, someone who would shoot without thinking, even at federal agents. But because the FBI and law enforcement never backed down, today that man is no threat to anyone. Now his life is only behind iron bars.